First, all let's do,
Excellent.
we'll start with introductions. I'm Harry Ford, Deputy County Executive.
Alan Sorensen, Commissioner of Planning. Travis Seawald, Deputy Commissioner of Public Works.
Nicole Farmer, New York State DOT.
Scott Maley, Town Newburgh.
Lauren Bennett, OCTC staff.
Raina Tweel, OCTC staff.
Bedford East, Orange County Planning.
Rob Harrington, Orange County Planning.
Tony Cardone, Town of Monroe.
Welcome,
Barry
welcome.
Cheney, Orange County Legislature.
Okay, and who else do we have online?
Online, we have Charlie Carnes with the town of Crawford, John Ravella with the village of Walden, David Gilmore, I believe David Gilmore's with Verge Group. And he's with this village of Curious Joel. Is that correct, David? If you want to just add it in the chat. Oh, there you are. Or no? I thought you were- Okay. Got Amani from Federal Highway Administration,
Go sit over here.
George Serrano from the town of Walk Hill, Hal Stewart Fisher, who is with the Newburgh TAC, which is Transportation Advisory Committee, I believe.
Yep.
Hal, okay. Jessica Ridgway, who's OCTC staff, Michael Weeks, who's representing the city of Port Jervis, Chad Wade with the city of Newburgh, and then I have one participant, P and D. I don't know if you want to add in what that means in the,
Yeah, it's Aaron Doach. We're representing a number of municipalities in Orange County.
okay, thank you very much. And that's our
That's it?
participants
All
on.
right, great. Okay, now that we all know who's here, there's an opportunity for public comment. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share today? Going once? Okay, we'll move on then. I do need a motion to accept the meeting transcript from January 31st, 2023.
I'll make one.
Second. Thank you, Ms. Cardone. All those in favor? Opposed? Accomplished. Okay. Next is the Transportation Improvement Program, and I will turn this over to Mr. Sorensen, our commissioner.
Harry, thank you. Up first for discussion is the tip amendment. We have PIN 876-002, which is Town of Warwick Bike Route and Pedestrian Trail between the Appalachian Trail and the Warwick County Park. Additional funding to the existing project on the previous fiscal year, 2020-24 tip. Funding is being added, $370,000 through the carbon reduction program funding, an additional $92,000 local match, and $370,000 from the county legislature. This will allow this project to move forward. This action will go out for a 14-day public comment period, and the council will consider the action at the next policy board meeting on May, which is yet to be scheduled. We did receive a statement from Mike Sweeten, who was not able to attend. Any states, council members, a conflict prevents me from attending today, but I want to thank council in advance for supporting the tip amendment OCT 23-3, which places additional funds in PIN 876-002 that will finally allow this HPP project to be completed. I want to thank county legislature, county executive, and the county planning department for helping to identify the additional funds. I ask for your support in these efforts. Just so that is an overview of that tip amendment. All right. Any questions?
There's no vote taken today.
No, it'll be taken up at the May policy board meeting.
Comments, anyone? Let's say from the board, any comments?
No, just would appreciate support for it.
Great.
There were efforts to bid it, and the bids came in higher than what the money was that was available, both town, locally, and in the grant. And the legislature added a capital project. It's in November or December to add this to the capital project list for the counties. These monies would be helpful in that regard.
Anybody else? No.
Yeah, I would just add, it's a very good use of the carbon reduction program funding. We do have additional funding available, and we'll be looking to identify projects as we move forward. So the next item is the administrative modification, OCTC 23C. It's actually 3 projects. I'll start with the DOT project, which is pin 806-510, Route 17 at exit 122, stage 2, interstage reconstruction. They're increasing funding for fiscal year 2024, 11.95 million NHPP funding and 2.988 million local match from DOT. This state funding does not affect the local program, so it's important to acknowledge, and it will allow this project to move forward. I will be reaching out to DOT to invite the project manager for that project to see if he's available to come speak at the May meeting, just to provide an overview for the members. But that is an important project. It's part of the upgrades of Route 17 to eventually become I-86.
Do we have a date for May?
We do not, we will discuss it later.
Yeah, we're gonna poll the members. So the next 2 projects are 2 5310 projects that were selected in the statewide solicitation project. Projects were programmed for fiscal year 22 on the previous fiscal year 2020-24 tip. These projects are rolling funding from fiscal year 22 to 23 at the request of New York State DOT. Pin AT000 ATO 003, bless you. FDA section 5310 funding, that's for access support for living. And then pin 8T0 or ATO 004, FDA 5310 funding for Jewish Family Services. Both of these are rolling funding from fiscal year 22 to 23. There is no further action needed from the council. Rob, would you want to add anything about?
Just that the 5310 program is administered by DOT out of their main office, and we have to have it on our tip because they're local agencies and both have received funding in the past. It's a formality on the county part to have it in our tip.
Any comments? Continue on.
Okay, next up is our fiscal year 2023 STIP performance report. Halfway through. As you know, Transportation Council is graded on our overall performance for the unamended STIP. We hit the midway point, DOT has provided a status report. Overall, we have 7 local projects programmed for construction obligation in fiscal year 23 and 5 state projects as of April 10th. 4 of the 7 local projects have been delivered on the local program, and 5 of the 5 state projects have been delivered. That puts us at a 57.1% for fiscal year 23 performance, with the federal goal of 75% of projects delivered and an acceptable rate of 50%. Put this a little in context. Our performance to date is actually better than it was in fiscal year 2022. But just want to note that this is a testament to the members for their collaboration and cooperation on the fiscal constraint and prioritizing project delivery. We have 3 other projects we are hoping to deliver this year. We'll reach out to the project sponsors for updates and hope to be able to reach at least 75% goal for fiscal year 2023, which would actually be one of the highest performance rates ever. So, New York State, Nicole, anything you would want to add from DOTs?
No, I would just say we're doing better this year than we have in the past, so that's a good sign, and it'd be great if we could reach 100. So if any of your projects are on that list, work with all of you to get it through.
Is there any outstanding reason why it's better this year than it has been in the past?
Well, part of the reason is because the tip snapshot this year was delayed due to the delay of the adoption of the tip. So normally SIP performance still started in October, but we were working on the old tip until the end of January. So we had extra time this year to clean stuff up.
I don't think that's what Harry wanted to hear.
Yes.
Collective efforts.
Thank you. Please note that Jacob DeWill has joined us. Okay, Alan, where are we now? Local project sponsor updates, are you done?
Just give a quick update on Scudamock Trail.
Go ahead.
So it's moving forward at a snail's pace, but we're getting there. So at this point, we are nearing completion of the NEPA review. Next steps will be design. So we have an RFQ that will be going out very shortly for the detailed design on the Scudamock Rail Trail, and we will be doing property acquisition. Property's been acquired by OSI. County in turn will be acquiring it from OSI. And I'm anticipating the design work take about a year. So I'm hoping, about this time next year, might be able to report that we're going out to bid, but I'm optimistic and Travis is probably going, it's a little optimistic.
We'll do our best.
It's
He's a busy boy.
it's 10-mile long trail. So there's but
County executive wanted it done yesterday, but
that's on me. That's
More pressure.
I think the right of way will be the key point. If it's all,
Yeah.
if everything is acquired and addressed with what we get from OSI, then I think the design can move forward pretty quickly. It's usually the stumbling point. So
we have a lot of experience with that. So, yeah. I mean, railroad right-of-way issues are so many different layers of ownership. And it's very complex. So I'm done.
okay, anybody else have any local projects they want to discuss, update us on? Anybody on the Teams or Zoom?
I have a couple here.
Take it away, Travis.
Otisville Viaduct, which was a 2018 Bridge New York project. We finally had our bid opening. The project was underfunded, but we're currently before legislature requesting to utilize CHIPS money. So hopefully that'll pass in the next couple of weeks. And we're optimistic that we'll be boots on the ground hopefully by June. Our other Bridge New York projects that we're working on is Farmingdale Bridge. That's in design right now. And then we have two culvert projects, the Neversink Drive culvert and Lakes Road culvert, which we're about to execute design contracts on.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Harry, this is Charlie Carnes.
Go ahead, Charlie.
How are you?
Good morning.
I need some help from the state. We've been working on the Bullville, New York project. And it has to do with right-of-way issues, which I know is a problem, but this is 3 years now. Middletown sent the project over to Poughkeepsie. It's sitting up in Poughkeepsie. And the state's calling us, whether or not we still want this grant, from 3 years ago, which obviously we still want the grant, but we're making no progress with the state on getting the right-of-way so this project can get going.
Okay.
What project was that?
What's the
Uh,
pin, Charlie?
You got to give me a minute on that. I got to run to Dan McCann to get the pin on it. It was a grant we received from the senator. It's Bullville, New York. It's basically improvements there. And because of that strange 5-way intersection, there's a lot of right-of-ways there. So we worked through Middletown. Middletown turned it over to Poughkeepsie. And it's up in Poughkeepsie somewhere. And the holdup, I guess, my understanding is it has to do with right-of-way issues. But, 3 years is just way, way too long to get this going. And now the state's calling us, do we want to give up the grant money? Because, they're asking us once a month, what's the status of this and why aren't we moving on it?
Is this a Senate 122 project? Is that
Yes,
term
I
familiar?
believe that's correct.
That will help me. Okay, I will reach out to Marietta and have her contact you.
Okay, and if they can contact Dan McCann's in charge of that project, we sent everything there, maps, everything, went to Middletown, and then recently they told us it's up in Poughkeepsie. And, we keep checking back, but, again, this is at least 3 years old.
Okay.
And it's not a big project. It's street lights, a clock, some cosmetic improvements. It's not a big deal. So there's no way in my mind that this should be going on 3 years.
Okay, I will have someone reach out to you.
Thank you very much.
Anything else, Charlie?
No, that's it. Everything else, we're moving on. All the projects in Crawford are moving. We're gonna make progress on Route 302, Route 52. So no, we're moving. And the community development project's moving too.
Great. Is there anyone else who would like to give us a update on a local project?
Well, traffic operations, city of Middletown, it started full speed. This is the second year, phase 2. So Boyce is working and Pentel is working, and hopefully we're gonna have traffic signals, new ones very soon. So it's all moving.
Anyone else? The county has 2 projects. They're in front of the county legislature right now. One is to assist the city of Newburgh in the development of a new river landing. It's about $4 million, I believe. And that'll be voted on and approved and accepted by the county legislature at their next meeting. And the second one is with Dutchess County, where we have a $500,000 study grant to look at bringing Stewart Airport, a connection from Stewart Airport to Beacon train station. And that also is in front of the county legislature for their next meeting, and it'll be approved, and we'll move forward on that. And the idea is to bring, it actually goes back to Maurice Hinchy, when he was our congressman, of bringing a light rail down 17K Broadway over to Newburgh Beacon Bridge and into Beacon. It's sort of a wild dream. My county executive doesn't think that it's going to happen, but at least it'll be studied and will be available for public consumption and discussion. So, is there anyone else? Any other local project? Yes.
I'd just like to add, Gedalia Zegadin from the village of Curious Stroll joined us.
Welcome, Gedalia.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to old business environmental justice discussion, and that will be Lauren.
Yes. All right, you want to go to the next slide? So today, we're going to talk about environmental justice. To give some background, the Village of Curious Joel sent in a request to the council to consider an action to amend the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, and the Long Range Transportation Plan, the TIP and the LRTP, to include for the environmental justice, to change the way it was worded, so it was minority and low income population, it is minority and low income. They have requested that it's changed to minority and or low income. So this was brought in front of the planning committee in November. It was discussed and the members asked for more information. They wanted to know what other MPOs were doing. So we have put together a presentation. So the roadmap for today's presentation will just give some background on the environmental justice program. We'll also give some updates on the new Justice 40 program. They are different programs, so we want to make that differentiate between the two. We'll also share how OCTC meets these requirements. We'll look at what other MPOs are doing, share best practices, and then we'll have the opportunity to discuss next steps and how environmental justice and equity can be integrated into the transportation planning process. We already integrated in, but we can discuss some of the different options. And by the end, we'll have an opportunity for members to discuss. The staff is looking for some guidance and next step from the members on where you want to go with this. So with that, next slide, please. Go back. Okay, next, yeah. So environmental justice came about with Executive Order 12898 in 1994 under the Clinton administration. So under that's kind of a excerpt from the executive order, but I wanted to call attention to the part in green that says identifying and addressing as appropriate disproportionately high and adverse human health or environmental effects on its programs, policies, and activities on minority and low-income populations. So part of that order was for federal agencies to look at their programs and provide guidelines. So as the OCTC, we are following the USDOT and FHWA's or guidance, which came about in 97, 98. And then it was they established the environmental justice. From now on, I'm kind of use EJ, environmental justice, as an acronym. So the EJ policies and procedures related to their activities, and it was revised and reissued in 2012. So with this, USDOT identified 3 fundamental principles of EJ that guides USDOT actions. And so next slide. That is to ensure the full and fair participation by all potentially affected communities in the transportation decision-making process, to avoid, minimize, or mitigate disproportionately high or adverse human health and environmental effects, including social and economic effects on minority or low-income populations, and to prevent the denial of, reduction in, or significant delay in the receipt of benefits by minority or low-income populations. So next slide. So how the OCTC integrates that. So first is the responsibility of the project sponsor, so you all. So FHWA considers EJ in all phases of project development, including planning, environmental review, design, right-of-way, construction, maintenance, and operations. So as the recipient of federal funding, so when you're putting a project on the tip, it is the project sponsor's responsibility to meet EJ requirements for project development, construction, and whatnot. And this is done largely through the NEPA process. Next up. So as recipients of federal funding for the OCTC, we ensure the EJ principles are incorporated into our planning activities. We provide data analyses. We incorporate environmental justice and equity planning in our programs, for instance, safety, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian planning. And we've also incorporated it into our public participation. So outreach for the long-range transportation plan, for the transportation improvement program, and different studies that we undertake. Next slide. And so what is equity? So we'll be kind of using this throughout the presentation as well. Equity is defined as just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential, unlocking the promise of the nation by unleashing the promise of us all. So that's part of the American Planning Association, or APA's definition for equity in planning. In terms of OCTC and MPOs, how we look at equity, we often refer to it as an expanded list of socioeconomic indicators based on communities' areas of concerns. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is just some of the indicators that MPOs throughout New York and OCTC also will look at. And, you know, it really depends context sensitive what we're looking at. So for public participation, we may look at educational attainment, limited English proficiency, so we can help kind of tailor some of our strategies. Another example is if we're doing transit planning, we may look at areas with zero-car households, income, and whatnot. So that's how we integrate environmental justice equity into our planning process. Next slide. So how does OCTC meet and even exceed the environmental justice requirements? So for public participation, we've adopted a public participation plan in 2021. We kind of went above and beyond, and we identified hard to reach populations, and we identified strategies to target those communities. So targeted engagement strategies. And this is used by OCTC staff. We also provide it as a toolkit for consultants or members. If you're looking to do some sort of outreach, you can use this toolkit. And then data analysis. We use the latest American Community Survey or census data at the census tract level to identify areas that are higher than the county average for low income and minority communities. At the LRT and the long range transportation plan, we also looked at limited English proficiency. In the TIP, we look at a high level analysis of where projects are located. We look for benefits and adverse impacts. But again, it's the project sponsor's responsibility to adequately address any adverse impacts. Next slide. So what is Justice 40? Oh, go back one. So Justice 40, Rana, can you go back a slide? All right, I'll just read. So Executive Order 14008 in 2021 established the Justice 40 initiative, and that's under the Biden administration. And that's, the federal government has made it a goal that 40% of their overall benefits of certain federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities that are marginalized, underserved, and overburdened by pollution. And those four, well,
One sec, guys.
I'm sorry, technical difficulties.
Yep.
Okay, so they have a few principles as part of that. They're developing methods to calculate benefits and burdens, incorporating components of Justice 40 into notices, guidance, reporting requirements, providing technical assistance and support to disadvantaged communities, and conducting program evaluation and improving equitable program design. Yes, you can see some of those guiding principles. So for the US DOT, again, all the different federal agencies are finding ways to incorporate Justice 40 into their programs. So three major components that the US DOT is implementing is the needs of community through meaningful public engagement, how a community is impacted by lack of transportation investments and options, and what benefits a project may create to alleviate how the community is experiencing the disadvantage. So OCTC and Justice 40 requirements. So we have the goal of 40% of formula funding to benefit disadvantaged communities. Right now, that's for two funding sources, the carbon reduction program and the congestion mitigation and air quality funding. The Justice 40, and I want to be very clear on this. So Justice 40 initiative developed maps to promote uniformity across government and federal agencies. So there's two maps. There's the Transportation Disadvantage Census Tract Mapper and the Climate and Environmental Justice Screening Tool that they're working on. So each of the different funding sources will identify the mapper or criteria they're looking at in the notice of funding. So for example, the Raise Discretionary Grant, they have a mapper that they look at. So they're identifying the disadvantaged communities, they being US DOT. They identify, we do not do that at the local level. So it's very separate from the EJ areas. So I just want to make that clear as well. And then you can go, I think I have three maps, yeah. So this map is the Climate and Environmental Justice Screening Tool. So you can see there's census tracts in Middletown, Curious Joel, Newburgh, and Port Jervis, I believe. Or no, yeah. And so the next one, you can see disadvantaged census tracts are city of Middletown, but also in the town of Walk Hill, in the city of Newburgh, and then also Goshen, and parts of Chester, or town of Goshen, it looks like. And then the last one is the Raise Grant Mapping Tool. So they look at persistent poverty and historically disadvantaged communities. So if you are looking for the discretionary grant funding, please look at the notice of funding to see if your community is eligible, they will identify.
Can you go back one to the transportation disadvantaged census tracts?
Yes.
Why Goshen?
I know. I'm sure they come up as higher minority.
Yeah.
It does show up on our environmental justice as well.
Transportation, I mean, how about compared to Cutterbackville? You know,
That may be, the census tract is larger, so sometimes it can be lost in, oh my gosh, what's the word when you move up in scale? But I don't know, Gautam, do you have any comments? I know you're on here. I don't personally know exactly what goes into how they do this, but I can share the link if you're interested. Let me a minute.
Yeah, I don't have specific answers in this particular context, but the methodology is explained under each of the tools. Yeah, if you have a specific question, I can go look into it. Yeah, I can't speak to the specific circumstance of Goshen being included.
Thank you, Gautam.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can follow up and share this in an email with members if you're interested in how the methodology. And they do share all the methodology on the mappers. So Next, we'll go into a summary of the requirements. So just to summarize, Justice 40 has the goal of 40% of the federal investments of certain programs benefiting disadvantaged communities. For environmental justice, we're seeking out and considering the needs of transportation or traditionally underserved populations by existing transportation systems, but we're also looking at a high-level analysis to help mitigate adverse impacts in the transportation projects and programming. So what are other MPOs doing? First, one thing we've noticed is some MPOs include environmental justice focused communities and whatnot in their scoring mechanisms. We've included a link here from FHWA integrating equity into transportation funding and project prioritization. And DCTC recently just updated their long-range transportation plan, and they included a section on equity and removing barriers to transportation equity. And then they updated their project selection framework after their adoption of their long-range transportation plan. And they look at improving safety, reliability, and access in their identified focus areas. So that is just one community locally that is incorporating scoring mechanisms using equity, environmental justice focused communities. The next is data analysis. So a lot of MPOs will conduct environmental justice analyses or adopt policies that are full-fledged documents separate from their LRTP or their TIPs that review environmental justice planning. So MPOs will map out communities of concern. So it may not just be low income or minority. It may also include other different indicators that were highlighted in the equity slide. CDTC, they go a step further and they analyze their TIP projects and they'll give negative. It's not all just positive. You know, they really look at the projects to see if they will have a negative impact on environmental justice areas, if they add parking or car capacity, positive if they promote walking, biking, public transit, and then neutral if they include bridge or highway maintenance. So, and a lot of MPOs will also analyze or measure average commutes as part of the ability to access mass transit. Next slide. So how are they mapping? There really is no prescribed way. We've seen low income and minority, low income or minority, the low income and or. Some communities just say that they're looking at environmental justice. They don't even really break it out. So we're not sure how they're doing it. We also want to highlight that there's no data requirements. There's a lot of different ways that you can define low income. For instance, EPA, they also look at a threshold above 50%. We look at the county average. And then there's additional indicators that communities add in for hard to reach populations, areas of concern, equity focus areas. So there really is no one prescribed way of this is how you have to do environmental justice. It really is a program that's implemented in many different ways, that's context sensitive to your communities, our communities, and at different scales. And, it's just implementing it in different ways throughout their planning and programming. And that's really the key. So next steps. So we have the first is the member request from the Village of Curious Joel to amend the LRTP and the TIP to change the EJ maps from and to and or. So we have two maps. So this is, next slide, is what we adopted in the TIP. So this shows we're calling environmental justice areas, the areas in purple, which have both minority and poverty, but we also include the minority populations and the poverty populations. So those are populations that have poverty or minority rates that are above the county average.
Does the county OCTC have the authority to make that change?
There is,
The language change, to make it indoor?
it's a guidance, it's a program. So it's really, we're looking for guidance on how we want to move forward. It's never really been, since I've been here, it's never been discussed, and we've been doing this every year or so, every major project. So if there is debate, we want to, figure out how to move forward. But again, it's
Policy decision.
yeah, but there's
Okay,
Yes,
for sure that
yes.
was, the authority was there.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yeah. We just have to do it.
Yes.
So how we want to do it is what we're trying to figure out and what we want to do with it. And so this is what the low income and or minority environmental justice areas maps would look like if we adopted that change. And so the next, moving forward, so obviously we need to ensure that the environmental justice requirements are met. We're also staying up to date on new Justice 40 requirements as they come down. Again, this is a new program. We're still waiting on more guidance. And we'd like to look into incorporating some of the best practices around not only New York, but also the nation. There's an opportunity with the LRTP 2050 update. So there's a task for public participation, and we also included language for an equity analysis. So the maps will be updated as part of this process using the latest census ACS data. It will be consultant supported, and it is an opportunity to work through and kind of establish the criteria. We can also establish, if this is something that the council really wants to discuss and work through, we can establish a subcommittee and review best practices and develop next steps and present it back to the planning committee. There's also other options of incorporating none, one, more of some of these different things we've seen through NPO's best practices, such as separate environmental justice or equity analyses and separate documents, developing policies, or incorporating project selection criteria, using that as one of the components of project selection. And so with that, the next slide, this is just mapping tools that are out there. So the yellow, we use census data. The gray are some of the other tools that the federal government has created to look at similar criteria. The EPA, EJ screen and FHWA screening tool can help for project analyses. New York State has a disadvantaged communities map, and then the two US DOT transportation disadvantage, and then the CEJST tool are also included in there. Just to show you how many different ways people map and track this. There's a lot of tools out there if we want to adopt one of these. And then lastly, we want to open this up for discussion for members. So we'll look to have members speak first, and at the chair's discretion here, if you want to open it up, if there's any public comment on this, you may. And then, but again, we're really looking for consensus on next steps. So with that, we'll open the floor to members.
This is Gedalia, if I may, since this is a Curious Joe request.
Go ahead, Gedalia.
So there are two components to this, and the reason why Curious Joe raised this issue is because in the newly adopted bipartisan infrastructure bill, there is a lot of discussion about additional funding going to communities that are eligible under this Justice 40. And we wanted to make sure that Orange County and the council gets the maximum allocation that it could get from the federal government to be eligible for any funding out there. So if the council is on record that there are eligible communities, and there are multiple between Middletown, Newburgh, Curious Joel, and others, the pot could just be larger if that is shown on the record, whether the money is for transit or the money is for additional projects to be selected. So the main goal is that Orange County should be positioned in the best place to get any potential funding out there. So the goal is not to have a better competition against other applicants on behalf of Curious Joel. The goal is that the ACTAC and the county in general should get a better slice of any pie that is available now or may become available in the future by showing that it has a vibrant Justice 40 program, that there are many communities that are eligible for it, and that may increase the pot going forward. That's one general issue. Then there is the other issue, which is decisions made by DOT. For example, the widening of the 17 program that we were all involved in the PEL study, and where the investment is going to be going. And there are many areas on the 17 that needs improvement. But if the state is going to make decisions based on Justice 40 criterias, we want to make sure that Orange County gets the best selection in that process, because it's not going to be one project for the 17 funded at once. It's going to be in pieces. And we want to make sure that Orange County is positioned to get one of the earlier parts of the investment by DOT on the 17 widening and improvements if it has a Justice 40 program, comprehensive and broad enough. So those are the general larger picture issues. Since the trend is moving in the direction of funding projects based on Justice 40, we want to make sure that the county in general is well positioned in that field.
Thank you, Gedalia. I'll first address, so we verified with Federal Highway and Gautam's on the line as well. But so the OCTC does not need to adopt a policy for Justice 40. That is the goal and the criteria. And so for the funding, each funding source has a mapper. And that's at the federal level. They're identifying the Justice 40 communities or disadvantaged communities or the persistent poverty or whatever that funding source is looking at. They identify that criteria. So it's the OCTC cannot.
Let me just correct you. There are applications that are submitted by each municipality directly, as you said, the race. And then there are applications submitted by the county on behalf of each municipality. For example, all the transit funding, it's even though Curious Joel has a comprehensive transit program, but the application for it is all submitted by the County Department of Planning and not by each municipality. We want to make sure that, for example, when the County Department of Planning is submitting for applications on behalf of municipalities within the county, that those pieces of information is there for them to take advantage of.
So my understanding is like 5307 and some of the allocation funding that comes to the county through the TMA and directly through the urbanized areas. So those are formula funds. My understanding is those are not tied currently to the Justice 40 criteria. If we receive further, guidance, that's something that we will let the council know, but we have not received any guidance on that. The two programs that the MPO receives in federal funding that have the Justice 40 goal of 40%, and the disadvantaged communities, that's the carbon reduction program and the congestion, the air quality congestion mitigation program. So currently those are the only two programs of the formula funding. And then you have the larger discretionary grants that the county can go for, the individual municipalities can go for. That is something that, I don't know, Rob, if you have any thoughts on the transit fund, or if that's something that we can
You just summed up.
Yeah.
Exactly. I haven't seen any changes to the transit program based on either of these as far as funding yet.
Yeah.
Not to say it won't change in the future, but I haven't seen anything yet.
I think the other important distinction is there's a distinction between environmental justice, or Justice 40 areas, and environmental justice areas. As the council, we do not have a say in how the Justice 40 areas are defined. It's
Currently, yes. Currently, we do not. We don't know if that's going to change. Like if you saw like the environmental justice executive order was 94, And that guidance for USDOT didn't come out till 97, 98. It was revised in 2012. So these programs take time for guidance to develop, and it changes over time. So we are still waiting on some of that guidance. It's a very new program.
And that is why I believe that the county should be ahead of the curve in having the maximum participation in this, because that's where the trend is going. And we want to make sure that if transit money or any other applications that's submitted by the county, if it could be increased because of the environmental justice, that it should be there.
I would just point out that, I mean, the other concurrent trend is ensuring that highway infrastructure improvements are not being made in the middle of environmental justice communities. That's one of the catalysts, for creating the environmental justice areas. Is historically highway funds were being used to cut highways and interchanges right in the middle of environmental justice communities. So that is something that USDOT and Federal Highway are looking closely at, that the highway improvements are not adversely impacting communities in which they travel through.
Yeah, and I think too, Gedalia, you bring up a good point. That is something that we are seeing trends in equity, and that's being incorporated largely in planning programs. And the county, or the OCTC, the council, we do not have an equity policy. It's not something we've discussed. So I think that's why we wanted to bring these different opportunities to the table to see if the council is interested in looking at this and how we can look at it. And I think the LRTP is a really good opportunity to kind of improve our program and look forward. And for the widening, you talk about specific projects, that's good to know. And my understanding is that the Route 17 environmental impact statement, which is on our tip currently, they'll look at that. That hasn't even kicked off yet. I don't think they've gone into contract, but we've been in contact with NISA. We know it's a very important issue. So when we do get the notification that they have a consultant on board, we will be working not only as staff, but making sure the council is included in the conversation with this project going forward. So thank you for bringing that up. And, if the villages does have concerns, that's stuff we want to know as staff. So, we can share a voice in your concerns as well. And so that's this is what the council's for. We have everyone at the table. So it's good to bring up if you have concerns. So is there any other member discussion thoughts in the room, online?
Yeah, Lauren, I'll just chime in from the federal perspective and just really emphasize a couple of points that you've made and that that have already been made as part of this. So yeah, one point that you brought up, Lauren, was that and I just want to emphasize it from the federal perspective. There have been no changes so far to the regulations or any sort of guidance as to how MPOs are to do or to conduct Justice 40 analysis or to implement environmental justice. That may well be coming. The planning regulations are being updated under the BIL, and there may be something in there regarding that. But as of now, there's been no updated guidance on how MPOs are to conduct environmental justice analysis or how to implement Justice 40. That said, it may very well benefit the MPO and the members to be able to quickly identify where the Justice 40 areas are. So that's totally a very worthwhile analysis, I think. So just keep that in mind. And I will note also, Lauren, you pointed out the plethora of tools available to conduct Justice 40 analysis and environmental justice analysis more broadly. The goal for Justice 40 is for there to be one tool for the entire for all of the agencies across the federal government, because I know some members in the call will probably be receiving funds from other agencies, and those agencies will be using a slightly different definition for Justice 40 right now, and therefore a different tool. But the goal is for there to be one tool. However, we have not heard anything to that effect yet as to what date a single tool will be available or how we're supposed to implement that. So that's something to keep in mind. And all that to say is that our guidance regarding Justice 40 is still very much we'll much more to come. I do certainly agree with the point that will benefit the council and members to be prepared and to be proactive in doing that analysis. But just thank you for your patience as we implement Justice 40. Yeah, I think that was all I had to cover, but otherwise, I think you covered the federal perspective pretty well, Lauren. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Gautam. And thank you for being on the call today. We appreciate it. So Gedalia, so I think there's twofold. So first, we want to look forward. I think everyone's kind of on the same page with that we want to kind of develop some sort of equity EJ analysis that incorporates Justice 40. We want to set up guidelines. And so I think that, as staff, we'd like to look forward. And so to do that through the long range transportation update, to really start to look at this. And then if needed, if we have guidelines set up that we can incorporate in the LRTP or a separate document, we can always adopt that as an addendum to the tip. So instead of amending the 2045 LRTP and the most recent tip, we ask that we look forward and look at updating the 2050 LRTP update, which will be adopted hopefully in November. And then if there's criteria that comes out of that we adopt that as an addendum to the tip. Does that sound, is there a consensus to move forward that way?
Yeah, I would ask that we move that way, especially with our staffing and everything. So, we're in the process of reviewing the response to the LRTP RFP, and we'll be selecting a firm shortly. And so we're right on schedule to begin to work on the LRTP. So it's the most efficient way for us to move forward.
Do you want to memorialize that in our next policy meeting?
Well,
We don't need to.
Memorialize.
The policy
that we're going to update
right now.
Well, I don't think we have a policy or we could get prepared by May, to be honest.
Just asking aloud.
Yeah. But definitely by November, hopefully, because we'll have a consultant team on board to help out too.
Right. I'm speaking about Justice 40 at the county level. We had that. Maybe we might be able to get the county to put a county road or a county bridge in a city. Right now, there's none. Again, just thinking out loud.
Yeah, noted.
Right, Kate?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all our responsibilities. We need the county, we need Travis to jump in.
Exactly.
Maintain
So
all
you've got
the
Foster County Road, that's bigger and longer than Broadway.
Foster Town and Rock Cut.
Right. Okay, anything else, Lauren?
So Gedalia, since the village was the one that brought this up, I just want to make sure the village feels comfortable moving forward with the way we've presented it.
If as I just heard, it's going to be in a certain way memorialized, I want to run it by my team that worked on this with you. Can you describe what you said in a short email that I could vet that through the people that worked on it in my team and get back to you on that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's away now too, right?
Yeah, so we're not going to, we haven't come up with the criteria. We are just going to work through the LRTP to find some criteria. And now that we know that the members are more interested in this, that's something we can bring earlier to the table to discuss with the council as well.
Okay.
All right, and thank you. So we do have a few more items. Sorry. New business.
Okay, are you done?
Mhm. Yes.
Any other questions or comments from anyone regarding this? Any questions for?
Everyone's still awake on there, out there.
Move on to new business.
Well, good job, very thorough.
Yeah, we're awake.
Yeah, very well. Breaks down, in essence, the golden rule, whoever has the gold makes the rules.
No.
Okay, under new business, allocation of previously allocated FTA, section 5307, formula funds, Mr. Sorensen.
Okay, so our TMA receives unallocated 5307, 5340 funding. So we had available for fiscal years 2020, 21, 22, a total available for programming of $12,959,000. We, through our TMA meeting, we reached out to our partners over in Dutchess County and Ulster County and asked if they had any projects that they wanted to put forth for the unallocated funding. And we received 2 project requests, one from Ulster County and the other from Dutchess County. So for the Dutchess County request, they are seeking funding to support progress on a range of projects to include bus equipment purchases, engine transmission overhauls, and new bus shelters, all of which will improve bus operations and passenger safety. Estimated total project cost is $3.1 million, and the federal request is for $2.5 million. I'm going a little off script here, so I'm just going to read. So in Ulster County, they request FDA funding support for 4 capital expenditures at UCAT Transit Garage and Operations Center at Danny Circle in Kingston. The action, installing additional electric bus charging infrastructure. 2, installing rooftop solar PV to support bus operations and facility electricity needs. 3, to purchase 2 cutaway battery electric buses for scheduled fleet replacements. And 4, purchase installation of bus shelters. They have an estimated total project cost of $3.225 million and a federal request of $2.58 million. We staff have recommended that we support these 2 requests from Ulster County and Dutchess County. There'll be a remaining balance in the unallocated 5340 funding available of $7,899,647. The council will take action on these requests at our May meeting. So just a little backdrop: through mutual agreement, the MPOs agree to distribute the funds as described. Orange County Transportation Council did not put in a request at this time. We always reserve the right to do so, partly because we have currently have sufficient funding allocated through other programs.
Let me ask you this, Alan, with the request from Ulster and Dutchess County, it still leaves a balance of what in the overall fund?
Do you want to go back one?
Yeah, it's the balance in the overall fund is $7,899,000.
Just under 8 million.
Yeah.
We have yet to identify a project for that,
Well,
For the unallocated,
For the
yes.
unallocated.
5307.
and who's going to be working on identifying an $8 million project?
That's something that the
The
TMA will
TMA.
discuss. So right now, the call was internal. They really looked at the deficit of the Dutchess and Ulster County Transit. And both identified deficits, that they needed the funding. So that's why they were allocated that unallocated, funding pot. So
But we do reserve the right to go back if we need it.
What's the time frame for the money?
They've used the fiscal year 2020 and
like 22, 23,
Yeah.
24, depending on the project. There are a lot of different projects, so they have different, but I think it's mostly
We have
within
time.
the fiscal year 2024.
Let me put it another way. If we were to identify a project in Orange County for up to $8 million, how much time would we have to develop that project and collect that money?
That's a good question. I don't know.
It would depend on what year the money winds up being, because it's a combination of years, and I also know that we did not put in for a project because Orange County is not in a deficit with our funding. We have 5307 funding that's already Orange County's that we're trying to identify projects for.
One thing I'll add is we've just gone through the Middletown bus network redesign. We're currently going through the Newburgh area transit system redesign. And as a result of the Newburgh or Middletown bus network redesign, we know we're gonna need additional buses. Same will likely be the case with Newburgh area system transit redesign. So it may be that at some point in the near future, we have a need for funding. I'm not saying, and if we do, through our conversations through TMA, our colleagues are aware that, we reserve the right to come back with it.
Anything else, sir?
On that, no.
Okay, any questions for Alan on this, anybody? Okay. Next is to endorse targets for bridge and pavement performance measures.
Yes, so the statewide performance targets are back. So we adopted the performance PM3, which is the system reliability and also the emissions performance measures at the last policy meeting. So this time we're looking at the performance measures for bridge performance on the national highway system and both good condition and poor condition. And then the pavement performance on the NHS by interstate and non-interstate for good and poor pavement condition. So it is required by federal law that state DOTs and metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs, establish these performance targets. So New York State DOT reestablished their statewide performance targets for the period of 2021 through 2025. MPOs are required to either establish their own separate targets or recognize the NISDOT targets within 180 days of NISDOT establishing those. So we are agreeing to support NISDOT's targets. And by saying that, we are saying that we will plan and program projects that contribute to realizing the state targets. And so we will bring this to the council for adoption at the May meeting.
Okay, any questions or comments? All right. Next are reports from Orange County Transportation Council staff. Do we have any?
Yeah, so I'll go real quick. So we have two projects currently we're working on. First, as we said, is the long range transportation plan. We're updating that to a future year of 2050. We put out an RFP in March and we got one response. We are currently scoring that and we will have a selected consultant by May 1st. So at the last meeting, we asked for OCTC members interested in sitting on the LRTP advisory committee. So we have 3 OCTC members sitting on our advisory committee, 1 member for each geographic area. So Scott Manley is representing the Newburgh area. We have Jacob Tuweel representing the Western Gateway area. And Mike Sweden is representing the Southern area. So you guys will kind of be representing your geographic area. So if you are not on the advisory committee, but you have concerns, you can contact the rep for the advisory committee if you have issues or concerns. And that's not to say that you will not be part of the larger LRTP development. We'll be having stakeholder groups meetings. We'll be updating you during these meetings. There'll be extensive public outreach process. So there are opportunities to, and we encourage your participation. And yeah, we look forward to getting this work underway. Hopefully we'll adopt it in November. We got a really tight timeline, so it'll be intense, but we're excited.
Lots of reports.
Appreciate you stepping out to doing this work next week as well.
Yeah. And then we have a coordinated public transit human services transportation plan, or our coordinated plan. So we kicked that off in the beginning of March. This looks at I think we have to, it's a required product. It kind of looks at the 5310 funding. So it's works to coordinate with community members, key stakeholders, and other partners in helping us prioritize funding for improving and enhancing transportation throughout the county. And it looks at transportation needs for seniors, youth, people with disabilities, people with low incomes, limited English speakers, people without access to private vehicles. So right now we have developed a web page on the ridetransit.orange.com/coordinated plan. We have a survey that we have published and that we are going to be pushing out and sharing. So if you have a human service transportation agency or you coordinate human service transportation, we'd really appreciate your help in pushing out the survey as part of our outreach process. We'd really like to get to our target audiences and get some feedback. So we will send that out in an email. And we will update everyone on the plan at the next meeting as well. And then finally, save the date. So we have to move the second Tuesday meeting in May, the 9th. We the staff will be in Syracuse for the NISAMPO conference. So I have initial dates that I will read through. If you guys know that they're not gonna work, please let us know if there's big conflicts. And then we will send out a poll. But so the first is, we're gonna keep it on the Tuesdays. So the third Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday, which is the 16th and the 23rd, this room is available at 1 PM, our normal policy board time. But we have to be out by 2 PM. So we'd have to keep it under an hour. I know
That's a
Harry
good
likes that.
No chairs.
We also have the opportunity on the 23rd, which is the fourth Tuesday, and then the 30th, which is the fifth Tuesday, to hold it at 10 AM. And that fifth Tuesday, the 30th, we can also hold it at 1 PM. But that is the Tuesday after Memorial Day, so we know people may be on vacation
Yeah.
and whatnot.
What was the other one? Not
The 23rd?
The 16th and the 23rd.
Yep.
16th, I can't make it. I'm gonna be out of town.
Okay, 16th.
Actually, I'll be out of town also.
On the 16th?
So,
Yep,
So we'll
Scratch
look
that.
at 23rd possibly,
I'm good to 23rd.
Yeah, I'm fine.
23rd.
yeah,
Okay, and we didn't want to look at the 30th, or we
No,
did
I-
want
I
to,
know I can't make it.
we can't make it.
So it's 23rd.
All right, so we'll look at the 23rd, either at 10 AM or 1 PM. Does anyone have a preference, morning or afternoon?
10 AM would be better for the city of Newburgh.
Okay.
mhm,
10 AM.
beautiful.
Was that you, Charlie, that said 10
That was
AM?
me, yes, 10 AM is preferable.
All right, so we will,
Thanks, guys.
we do need in-person quorum, so I will send out a poll. And if you say you can make it, I
You better be
expect you
there.
to make it.
Yeah.
But no, we do need an in-person quorum, so we'll follow up with all the voting members on that to ensure we have it. But thank you guys for your
Is this
coordination.
room available that day?
Yes,
Okay, good.
yes.
That was in the third floor again?
Yes, this room.
Thanks.
All right, is there anything else anyone would like to share with us today? Not? On Zoom, anybody? Okay, then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
Second? Okay, all in favor? We are done. Thank you, Lauren.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Excellent, thank you, guys.
Two things.